I'm Tony Ruiz, contributing editor at Gold Derby, here with Tiffany White Stanton, the costume designer on Barry. And I wanted to ask you, Tiffany, because there is this, I think, unfortunate misconception that costume design really only comes into play, when you're, doing these big period pieces, but it's just as crucial for a contemporary series, and sometimes even more so. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I definitely would agree with that. I know it is really funny. People think somehow the actors just come to work looking like that, as if it isn't an entire team of people making it happen. But yes, I mean, I think in some ways contemporary can be even more difficult to collaborate with because people have opinions on which jeans they wear and which tennis shoes they wear or which high heels they wear. Whereas in period stuff, they often will get in what they're told to do because of what the research is and what historically makes sense. So in some ways, there's a lot more collaboration between the costume designer and the actors for contemporary clothing.
And so, especially with this final season of Barry, um, you have all of the characters going through these different kind of iterations of themselves on so many different levels. And I just want to, zero in on some of what I think are the highlights necessary. Starting off with Barry himself. I mean, how did you see his look with the evolution of this last season?
Well, it's interesting because I mean, we with Bill or with Barry, we had to put him in a prison uniform, and so the first few episodes there wasn't a lot that I could do with that, except for we ended up making all of those prison costumes because they had to be to certain specifications because of where we were shooting and what the prison would allow. And nobody makes well, they do make them, but it takes months and months to get, which we didn't have that timeline. So we ended up custom making all those prison uniforms, which is kind of a funny little side note about our season. But as far as the time jump was concerned, that's when we really start to see Barry in real clothes again. And it was important for us to think about, even though it's an 8-year time jump, we didn't want to get into sort of like predicting what the trends of silhouettes would be in the future because we didn't want to distract the audience too much. So I really thought it should be very classic, and Bill really liked that idea. So we kept with very classic silhouettes that, we see now, but it's also, very possible we would see it in 8 years. And so then with him, I really tried to imagine, well, what would Barry's mind go to, which he grew up in the Midwest. So we really wanted to make him look like the very typical conservative Midwest father who was a good dad and part of the community. So that's why we went with the plaids and the jeans to really make him look not like he would stand out too much, but that he would fit right into a Midwestern landscape.
And I find that hilarious, especially considering that what Sally ends up wearing in the time jump is in many ways completely far removed from who she has been through the whole series.
Right. I mean, for her, I really thought about, and I really spoke with Sarah a lot about this. She's such a great collaborator, and she really liked the idea that, like, while she's at the restaurant, she's playing a role. She's playing a part, and so she gets to kind of pick what that part is, and a pill popping, desperate Midwesterner who has like no, no real goals in life, that seemed to fit the role that she wanted to play. And so we could do that at the restaurant. And I loved the idea of black for her, like, and she has the dark wig, and it just all felt really like felt sexy in a way that, like, Sally in LA never really leaned into at all. And then when we see her at home, she's, in sweatpants and not really trying at all and just really not playing a role at all. She really has kind of given up as far as, you know, her home life. So I like to see her in those like disgusting gray sweatpants and ratty boots and things like that that really showed that she wasn't even trying at all.
And yet that still contrasts even more nicely with the final kind of Sally that we see, the school drama teacher.
Right. And that I really wanted her to look like she finally fit in her own skin. Like she finally really was feeling herself. She, you know, in some ways her dreams did come true. That, I mean, she's not a well-known actress, but she is a successful director and she is still in the theater, which is where her heart always was the whole time. So we really wanted to dress her in things that made her look comfortable and confident and functional. And so she really is putting her work on display, and not the costumes wouldn't be on display. It was really about what she was bringing to the table at the theater and at the school.
I have to imagine that one of the delights of this show is, for you from a costume standpoint, is anything revolving around Hank.
Of course.
And I want to actually start with Guillermo del Toro, because
Oh, okay.
that outfit, just go.
With Guillermo or with
Yeah,
no?
with Guillermo.
Okay, so with Guillermo del Toro, I kind of liked this idea that of like this old school gangster, like Pachico, like 1930s sort of Mexican gangster style. So we went with like the long duster coat and the chain and the hat and everything to just make him look like kind of like zoot suit, old style gangster. And Guillermo was so game for it. He loved it. He thought it was such a fun idea. And he always says that he has trouble finding hats that fit him. So I was like, I'm gonna make you a hat. So we custom made that hat. And it looked so brilliant. And I thought it was so fun to kind of do a throwback gangster feel for him, because it's so unexpected for him.
But that's, I think, one of the joys of the series is that you get to go into all of these different worlds that still exist in kind of the same universe. Like, Hank and the gangsters and all that kind of stuff have very distinctive looks, and I'm curious as to how those looks have evolved over the course of the series.
It's funny, this year we had so many gangs. We kept every script, we were like, there's another gang in here. We had like of course we had the Chechens, but we have the Korean gang, the Guatemalan gang, the and then at the end we have Fuchs's Raven gang, we have the Gucci gang, that's the NoHo guys. So there were so many different gangs in there, which was so fun from a costume perspective to really try to pull them apart and see what all of them would be wearing. And so yeah, I mean, over the years it was really interesting because the Chechen gang started especially off in season 1 and season 2. Remember, like, Barry was training those guys, so they were all wearing jeans and old polo shirts and things like that, and old shirts that looked like they came from East Europe. And then by the end, they're holding AK-47s and, in suits and designer suits. So it was really fun to take them from the beginning to the end. And of course, I didn't do the first season. That was Audrey Fisher, but she established the Chechen look. And I thought it was so brilliant. But it was really fun to play off of that and take it forward to make them look like legit, and what in their minds as gangsters is legit, and they have to look fly, like that is, they have to drip. So their version of what a gangster is really what is so fun about Barry. Is like, obviously it's grounded in reality, but there are these heightened moments that help with the humor and that tell a story that is so fantastical. So it was fun to get to do that in the costumes.
And with Anthony Carrigan as Hank, what is, I assume that you work really closely with him in terms of Hank's look, because Hank's look is always so different no matter what the environment is.
He is brilliant himself with clothes. Anthony is, and he's such a collaborator as well. And he you know, he has ideas, but he's also very open to ideas. So it was really fun to work with him. We started, you know, I wanted to keep with him doing the polos, you know, that he's known for, of course. Except for when he was in New Mexico, we had to have the great the wrap and the chain hat and sunglasses that we thought would be really fun if he found that out shopping and was like, look, it's incognito, you know, and put that on. But yeah, so I wanted to keep him in the polos at first and then really make the transition into the suits, to really show that his business had gone legitimate, and that's his version of a legitimate, what a businessman looks like is a suit. But of course we couldn't just put him in like a navy pinstripe. It had to be, you know, a green and a purple, and we would mix it with these shirts that we got from this brand called Mondo that kind of have like an Eastern European feel to it. They don't feel quite like an American brand. And so we used a lot of that, and they looked fantastic on him. And then at the very end, I did want to put him back in the polo. So with the white suit, we put him back in a tight fitting polo that had kind of like a Hawaiian print feel to it. So it was still very bold, and still very Hank, but it was kind of mixing those two worlds together.
Stephen, when Stephen Root and I spoke last week, we talked a lot about what went into the look of the Raven, which is still, to my mind, one of the great reveals of the season. What was kind of your role in helping craft that look?
Well, you know, the interesting thing is about, I mean, we were a little bit pigeonholed in that, you know, people leave prison with what they came in, right? So I was looking at the costume that he came in, and he had that plaid shirt, and he had like it was like a corduroy jacket with like a faux fur collar or whatever. And I was like, what are we going to do with this? How is he going to look like the Raven? And then I met with the makeup artist, Corey, who did all of his tattoos, which he is just a phenomenal artist and incredible at what he does. And he custom made all those tattoos. So when he was showing me what his plan was for the tattoos, I was like, we have to just put them in a tank top so that you can see all of that. You have to be able to see everything. And so lucky enough that one of the pieces that he had gone into prison with is that white tank top. It was underneath his plaid shirt. So we just stuck with that so we could really see all of those tattoos. And that's how he came out, and that's how he stayed. And then we added the leather jacket at the end, you know, just to kind of beef him up a little bit and make sure he looked really tough and strong in those last frames.
And we obviously have to talk about Cousineau, because especially after the time jump, he comes back with like this kind of new age sort of like, you know, he spent time at a kibbutz in Israel. What went into some of those last looks for him?
Well, you know, the thing is, I was thinking about it, and you know, men of a certain age, they stop changing their style for the most part, right? So I was thinking, okay, at Cousineau's age, would he really like completely change his style? And I was like, no, I think he would find the version over there that's like a little bit more relaxed and a little bit, you know, less stiff, and you know, like he could work with his hands and he could work in it. So even though he still has a 4-pocketed jacket, it's like a very soft linen that's very flowy and bohemian, but it's still the same silhouette that he was wearing. And then the same thing with the button-down shirts, and even the plaid sort of at the end when he dresses up to go meet Matt Iserson. That was all sort of based off of what he would have worn before, but just they're more beat in, they're more used, and they're softer materials, and they're just a little bit more bohemian feeling. But then, you know, you mix it with the long hair and the beard, and it really just became this whole different person. But yeah, his style, I was trying to keep in line with what he used to wear, but just a different version of what he used to wear.
So, you know, it's always interesting to look back on a show once it's over and your experience working on it. And I'm curious, you know, working with Bill and Alec, and Bill, who directed all of these episodes. What was your working relationship like with him, and what do you remember most about it?
With Bill, I mean, I know everybody says it, but truly the man is a genius. He really is. He thinks like no other person I've ever met. And I do think that he also thinks about all of the departments in a way that I've never met any other director, where he comes very prepared with his ideas. He comes very prepared to set. And so he runs such an efficient set that it is just the climate of that alone is so wonderful to be involved with. But then he also is, he started off at improving, so he is open to ideas, he is open to chatting, he likes the conversation. So he would tell me a few things that he really did want, but a lot of times he let me bring stuff to the table, and he would, he'd be okay with it, or he would say, work with the actor on it and let me see it, that kind of thing. So he was really open to a lot of things. I mean, he has a vision for sure, and so the important key parts of the costume vision he would let me know, but for the most part he was very collaborative and very he allowed us to do so much and to bring so much to the table too, which I'm so grateful for. I feel so lucky to have worked with him, and I hope I can again sometime. He was really amazing to work with.
Well, Tiffany, congratulations on a great final season of Barry. It's one of my favorite shows. So,
Oh, good. Mine too.
yeah.
I consider myself biased.
Everybody go to goldderby.com, make your predictions for the Emmys, and stay tuned for interviews with more contenders throughout Emmy season. Tiffany White Stanton, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.